And now I am joined by Aneesh Chopra, who served under President Obama as the first Chief Technology Officer of the United States. Aneesh is currently the president of CareJourney, an open data membership service in the healthcare space. Aneesh, it's so great to see you. You know, when you were working in the Obama administration as the CTO, which is such a cool job, you pushed the National Wireless Initiative, you pushed Startup America. So you're right at the nexus of a lot of what we're talking about today. But I have to tell you, person after person after person that I've interviewed on the right and on the left has said, we have connectivity problems in this country. We have them in cities, we have them in rural areas. You look across there, we're talking about opportunity, but if you're not plugged in, you don't get to play. And so I'll just put it to you, why didn't you guys get it fixed, and what can the next crowd do to get it done?
Well, let me tell you the biggest bet we made, and it's a work in progress, and I think it's critical for us to get into this. The cost to deliver broadband infrastructure to the last mile is expensive, and a political debate on whether we subsidize it or let the market compete and consumers to pay, that's been the debate for the last 20 plus years on almost any infrastructure investment. What we did, bipartisan, by the way, Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison and Jay Rockefeller came together with Mark Warner's leadership and others to bring about what we called the National Wireless Initiative. We made a deal. We would subsidize the build out of a first responders broadband network. And that was called FirstNet, and it was bid out under the principle that whomever won the bid would rebuild almost a commercial network in those rural areas on the backbone of what is essentially a shared investment. And that was the core idea. We did fund this with the tune of something like $7 billion of upfront capital, not chump change in these days. The FirstNet board secured AT&T as the partner, and we are now in the implementation stage where they are going neighborhood by neighborhood, state by state, building out this network. So, Steve, if we had strategies that could bring the best of the public sector's assets and the private sector's creativity to lower the cost of last mile broadband, it would deflate some of the political debate about how much to subsidize for whom and in what circumstance, which is normally what gets this town divided.
So I'm partly optimistic based on what you said in terms of some of that infrastructure that's coming forward. Let me just ask you, we are talking about the future of work, but we're also going to have to talk about just the future after this pandemic, getting people to work. I recently spoke to former Energy Secretary Ernie Moniz, who has this idea of an energy jobs coalition to go out and build, for new grids, renewable energy, tying jobs to that. Is there the similar kind of opportunity in the connectivity and communication space that we should be thinking about along the lines that you've just said? We're not quite in the Great Depression, but we came darn close. And there are going to be a lot of people, even after we're bringing back to work, who technology is going to displace. And I'm just wondering, is there a way we can connect those people who are displaced through good training back to smart communications infrastructure?
Yeah, no. So the 80-20 rule, in my view, is 20 on the human labor for building out the networks. I think that's a multi-billion-dollar market, and we should train people. A lot of veterans coming home from Iraq and Afghanistan got employed in the wireless infrastructure market, and that is a wonderful place to take folks to put their skills to their highest and best use. But really, it's about the apps economy, and I think that's where you're going to see outsized economic gains. So I'm a believer in Steve Case's vision of the rise of the rest. And a critical dimension there is that communities all across America have expertise in textiles, agriculture, healthcare. These industries have not yet fully embraced the power and potential of digital technologies to modernize and to scale. So I believe there will be a whole new category of companies, not headquartered in Silicon Valley, but in neighborhoods that need the economic growth, that marry their local expertise of the subject with the digital capabilities that are coming to market. And that will give rise to new products and services that not only can solve the problems locally, but could scale across the country and globally. So really the eye on the prize for me is reskilling workers with their expertise to retool and build upon digital infrastructure through applications of the future. And that's really the big ball game between US and China and the global economy. Who will win the applications marketplace in the digital era?
You know, I'm glad you mentioned Steve Case. A few years ago, I rode with Steve on his big blue bus, which a bit of gossip, that big blue bus, the Rise of the Rest bus, used to be Mike Huckabee's campaign bus. They repainted it, but just a little bit of gossip there. But when we went from city to city, one of the things we saw in every city, we found entrepreneurs, you know, incredible talent in what you would call flyover country. Many of them were in the healthcare space, and in most of these spaces, there was a large medical facility, a research facility that was hoarding and protecting data. If you could imagine a big fortress, and then they're on the outside of the wall trying to do these cool and nifty things and, you know, kind of deal with it. And so again, I'm just wondering, you know, when you think about the future of work and you think, you know, about entrepreneurship too and connected, are there stupid walls out there in terms of not sharing what should be shared, of looking at the public commons and public opportunity? You're now a healthcare entrepreneur and no longer a government bureaucrat, you know, basically taking us into the wireless future. But I mean, how do you feel about, is this something we should be putting a bigger spotlight on?
Yeah, and I will credit bipartisan commitment to this principle that the consumer has the right to their health information, to their learning records, to their banking information. These are bedrock principles that have been enshrined in law that date back to legacy paper era. And what's happening now is a technical standards movement to digitize that right. And what that will unlock are all those entrepreneurs who are looking to deliver decision support to individuals to help them make smarter decisions at every step of their life. So imagine that veteran with GI Bill benefits making the decision which school to enroll in and which program to major in order to make the best decisions to build on the skills they learned in the military and set them up for lifetime economic success. Those are complicated decisions. And if you can inform them with digital applications that have access to your history, that know the demand signals in the market, you might get the kind of guidance counselor support that's missing in today's economy. In healthcare, in education, and in financial services, all three sectors do have bedrock rules of the road that if I request my data, I'm able to put that information into the hands of an organization I trust. In healthcare specifically, we are in the next 12 to 24 months implementing landmark interoperability regulations that build on President Obama's investment in electronic health records a decade ago. And they basically start with the principle, if you're a health plan or a hospital, you cannot block a consumer's right to pull that data into an application of his or her choice, even if the purpose of it is for the consumer to shop for lower cost alternatives that might hurt the institution locally. That challenge and opportunity, I think, is going to shape the next decade of healthcare reform while we debate healthcare insurance reform and subsidies and have a big political battle over that. Modernizing the system to actually lower costs and deliver better outcomes, we'll now see a digital component of that take hold. And I'm very bullish on that opportunity.
Aneesh, I'm going to ask you a cosmic question and give you about a minute to answer it. But you know, when you go back to the late 1990s, and when I was at the New America Foundation, we were, you know, at that time, broadband was not deployed. We used to do programs that the Marco Foundation funded and said, you know what, being a lawyer is going to change. You know, working at home, you know, being a farmer is going to change. We were looking at how, you know, this new platform was going to be so transformative. If you were a government, Senate staffer, how your life was going to change. When you look at 5G, which is often a holding place for talking about big data, Internet of Things, quantum computing, all of this other stuff that is going to connect us all more with rapid speed, I would just love to get a sense on whether, time and space are being changed in such a way, and if you can give us a quick snapshot of some of the ways our world is going to look different and feel different in a way that our lay audience, can get an understanding of how transformative this next stage will be.
Yeah, we've been watching transformation on two vectors. One is sector by sector disruption. And right now we're in the entertainment sector and social media sector, where I can share photos and communicate with friends and all the things that we do in our personal lives. There's a second dimension, which is what can I actually do given the technology capacity of my phone and the infrastructure? And so we've been basically incremental progress on these two dimensions. And they probably affected collectively maybe 10%, 12% of the economy have really gone through seismic change. What's now happening at a much faster pace is that with the security features that are going to come as part of the network infrastructure for 5G, we're going to see a massive scale up of the impact of digital communications in sectors that maybe had regulations that limited their use. So financial services, health, education, even government services delivery, they're going to have a much faster path to delivering services natively on broadband infrastructure because we're going to have more security built in and more capabilities around privacy. Then with the capability of the muscles of the networks,
right,
we're going to be able to do far more sophisticated applications, not just the sharing of photos and comments, but really driving actual machinery, decision support, robots as co-workers. So the applications will now scale to be able to do a lot more that we would normally think of as our actual hands labor. So if you look at these two pieces coming together, 5G is moving them both faster than they were. So the promise of getting to 80% of the transformation is now looking more like, got to 20. Now I think we're going to see that massive up curve as this infrastructure rolls out.
Wow. Well, Aneesh, what I will say is there are very few people I'd like to spend an hour talking to. You are one of the very few. Thank you so much, Aneesh Chopra, former Chief Technology Officer of the United States and also the president and co-founder of CareJourney. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.